All right, everyone, we are ready for the ultimate session. So as I was saying earlier, one of the goals of HamSCI is to really foster collaborations between professional space physicists and the amateur radio community. And we really want that collaboration to go two ways. We're hoping that space physicists can help the amateurs can help the space physicists, and we all have a really happy time together. So the next three talks are all from professional presenters, many of whom are also amateurs, so it's not a mutually exclusive group of people. But all of these talks are about either how HamSCI is working, how these groups hope to work with HamSCI, or how they're already working with HamSCI. So our next presenter is Dr. Jeffrey Mendenhall from the MIT Lincoln Labs, and he's going to present on SoFIE, the Solar Flare and Ionosphere Explorer Citizen Science Opportunity for Amateur Radio Operators. Jeff, come on up.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Good afternoon, everyone. As Nathaniel mentioned, my name is Jeff. I'm from MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Ruzhitskaya, who is the principal investigator for a CubeSat program that St. Francis is developing called SoFIE. The way this all started is about 2 years ago. I went down to St. Francis to help them kickstart their CubeSat program, and they were trying to develop a theme for what to put on that CubeSat. And they have a radio Jove antenna there they use to look at Jovian and also solar radio bursts. And the students decided they wanted to fly that above the ionosphere in order to get beyond the critical frequency of the ionosphere and see what's below that in terms of emissions. And we said, good. So they decided they're going to fly a 5-meter tip-to-tip or dipole antenna. And that's long enough to be able to wrap around a spool that you can put on the top of a 3U CubeSat. And so it's constrained by the geometry. And so for those of you who don't know, a CubeSat is a very small satellite. This is a 3U CubeSat. This is the one the size will actually fly. And it's a fully functional spacecraft that has solar panels, batteries, onboard computers, radios, and a payload. And so for their experiment, they're going to fly an HF receiver initially to look at solar radio bursts. And so the faculty and I asked them to step back, open their aperture up, and say, okay, if you fly an HF receiver in orbit, what else can you do with that? And so the students looked and they said, we can actually examine the Sun-Earth system, including the Earth's ionosphere. And so we went and pushed the students back and said, okay, what sources would you use to study the ionosphere to do that? And so they came back and said, you can look at ionosons, you can also look at beacons, and perhaps amateur radio operators. But they didn't really know how to engage the amateur radio operators in this idea. And so I started to look around and I started to find videos online about the HamSCI workshop. This is my first workshop, so I've never been to one, but I've seen a lot of your videos online. And I was impressed with how creative, how stubborn you can be. You're a technologist. You're interested in science. And I was like, wow, this is a great organization we want to team with as collaborators on this mission, but I didn't know how to engage you. And it became clear after all those videos, there's this central organizing body called HamSCI, which allows us to use that as our mechanism to engage the amateur radio community. And so that's why we're here. Last summer, Lanika and I talked to Nathaniel and offered a partnership between St. Francis and the University of Scranton on this mission, where St. Francis would provide the spacecraft and the mission capability, and the University of Scranton would be the interface or the portal to the entire global amateur radio operator community to support us in executing experiments on this mission. So it's very exciting. It's a great opportunity to engage you and have you participate with us as citizen scientists on this program. So I hope you'll find it very interesting, and I hope you'll want to engage us and become part of our team. So this is what we call the OV1 at Lincoln Laboratory, the operational view 1 of SoFIE. So SoFIE is called the Solar Flare and Ionosphere Explorer. That's our scientific objective. The true mission of this is an undergraduate and high school STEM program. And so we're training not only undergraduates at St. Francis, but also local high schools are contributing to experiments as well, which you'll see later. It's about providing that opportunity to engage in STEM, get them excited in the area, and then go on to graduate school. I forgot to mention St. Francis is located in Loretto, Pennsylvania. It's about 5 hours southwest of here, about an hour and a half south of Penn State. Our scientific objective is to study the coupling between the solar flares and the Earth's ionosphere. The approach is we'll fly a 3U CubeSat with an HF instrument. It's an electrically short dipole antenna that has a sensitivity from 3 to 30 megahertz. I don't know if you've seen other CubeSats, but the Sunrise CubeSat developed by JPL has a similar antenna length and sensitivity band. They're flying up in GEO. Also, Cal Berkeley is flying the Curie spacecraft, which has a similar antenna. It is flying in low Earth orbit. And then Phil Erickson is the PI on a CubeSat being developed at MIT at Haystack to also fly in low Earth orbit with an HF receiver as well, the vector sensor array. So we're within that family of CubeSats that are exploring the Earth's ionosphere. We're going to fly in a 500-kilometer polar orbit, and our main method for investigating the ionosphere and how it's being perturbed by the solar flares is through transionospheric radio propagation observations with you, the amateur radio operators, as key partners in that. We've gone through our mission definition review and preliminary design review, and we're trying to launch by the end of 2027. And the graphic down here really shows you what we're trying to do, where we fly SoFIE at a 500-kilometer polar orbit. We can watch the sun. We can also look down and engage multiple observations on the ground, either from WWV, amateur radio operators, or even radar providers on the far right. We also have built-in one-channel topside sounding capability around 7 megahertz. That's interesting. And then I also have this entrepreneurial amateur radio operator in the submarine over there. So if anyone's interested, I'd like to encourage that. That sounds very interesting. Okay, so the science objective is to study solar flares and the interaction with the Earth's ionosphere. And the questions we're trying to answer, or the students are trying to answer, are how does the ionosphere respond to solar flares? And how does the ionosphere recover from solar flares? And we do that through this radio propagation, transionospheric radio propagation measurements. As everyone here knows, solar flares are intense sudden bursts of radiation on the surface of the sun. They produce excess UV and X-ray radiation, which further ionizes different layers of the Earth's ionosphere. CMEs also can affect the ionosphere as well, and so we'll study both of those properties. And we picked a polar orbit in order to go over the poles, which is a very interesting region for ionospheric study. And so we'll measure the impact of solar flares on the ionosphere through these radio propagation experiments we hope to engage with you. The SoFIE CubeSat is a fully capable spacecraft. You can see the spacecraft bus components here on the lower left. It has solar panels. I'll show you a picture of this in the next couple slides. Onboard batteries. It has an onboard computer. We're going to have UHF and S-band radios to do uplink and downlink of data. Has magnetorquers for pointing, and also has IMUs to understand its relative position attitude of the spacecraft. The payload, we have 4 different instruments on the payload. We have the HF instruments, which I'll go over in a minute. We also have a soft X-ray sensor provided by Chestnut Ridge High School. That's the high school instrument they're providing. It mimics the GOES soft X-ray band. And so what we expect to see there is a relatively constant solar flux when there's no solar flares, and an increase in the solar flux when there's flares, and then back to nominal again. Altoona Area High School has also provided an Aurora camera to do Aurora imaging. And also we're creating a 630 nanometer camera to look at equatorial plasma bubbles in that emission line. For the HF instrument, we have what we call an antenna interface board. And what we have over here is we're actually flying 2 orthogonal dipole antennas, 5 meters tip to tip for polarization sensitivity. We have high impedance amplifiers here. So this is really a voltage measurement instrument, not a power transmission capability. And so we have 2 high impedance amplifiers, 2 parallel paths. We have a noise source here for calibration, and we're using the SDR Play Duo, both channels, when looking at each of these different antennas. It's nice having 2 channels because you can have redundancy in case one of the channels fails, or you can also use both antennas at the same time for polarization measurements. For those of you who know the SDR Play, it does not have a stable clock, and so we have a stable clock generation circuit up here where we have a 10 megahertz oscillator that's GPS controlled or disciplined. That will go into a phase lock loop circuit, which will provide a stable 24 megahertz signal here, or clock here. This will also feed up here, which is our one-channel sounder, where we have a direct digital synthesizer at the very top, provide our different waveforms. We then have a power amplifier. We're expecting not to transmit more than 1 watt on board for thermal reasons and other reasons, and I think that's plenty of power for interfacing with amateur operators. And then we'll have a coil to provide a complex conjugate here out to one of these antennas. And then we have switches in between here to make sure that when we're transmitting, we're not receiving, or to make sure we protect the receiver. So this is the overall architecture of our onboard antenna interface. This board has been designed. The first rev's been designed. It's been built, and it's in test right now. Right now, it's too big. It's supposed to be 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. We made it bigger in order to debug it, first rev. So the second rev will occur over the summer. This is going pretty well. The SDR Play Duo is the SDR we've selected for this. It's got 2 independent channels, which is nice for polarization. Got a wide frequency range, good ADC. We can have up to 10 megahertz of bandwidth. So we can look at 10 megahertz at the sun to capture their solar radio bursts. And then we can do similar on the ground if you'd like, or we can pick different channels for however you want to interface through these trans-ionospheric experiments. It's very flexible. And I've been interfacing with the SDR Play folks in England. They've been super. They've been talking about this. They gave us free radios. They gave us their bill of materials to understand the radiation sensitivity. They've been really supportive, so I give them a plug for their willingness to engage with us. The noise figure is a little high here at 15 dB, but we're putting a low noise amplifier in front of that to drop that noise figure down. And then it's a USB 2.0, so it's pretty easy to interface with our onboard computer, and it fits within our 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter envelope. With the 5 meter tip-to-tip sensitivity, we think we'll still be galactic background limited, which is good. And with the 14-bit ADC, we'll have a lot of dynamic range. So that's our sandbox up here. This is where we want to play. And so when you think about your experiments, think about if you can, whatever amateur radio bands you want to use between 3 and 30 megahertz, how would you use those either as individuals, as teams, as clubs, regionally, or even globally? What kind of experiments would you want to do to really understand what's happening with the ionosphere during solar flares? This is our spacecraft. This is the spacecraft bus. We're procuring the actual structure and the batteries and the onboard computer from the Ecuadorian Space Agency. They've been really excellent partners as well. And so you can see it's a 3U spacecraft. That's the same size as this. And you can see our solar panels deployed there. They're going to create 28 watts of power on board for our use. And the payload itself that we're providing is going to occupy about 2/3 of that space. So what kind of experiments can we do? I think you probably can think of more than I can think of right now. But this is what I put on here to stimulate your thoughts. We want to really look at the trans-ionospheric propagation and what happens across that spectral band or frequency band during solar flares and also in between solar flares as baselines. And so these are the sources we've identified so far that we'd like to engage with, which is we'd like to look at lightning. As Allison said, the Super Darn radar and other radars, what are available for us to do with experiments like they've done on previous spacecraft, like the EPOP spacecraft. WWV would be a great source. We've got ionosondes all over the world. That's a solar radio burst we took at St. Francis last summer on the far right. And then I put front and center the amateur radio operators. I think that's our biggest source of creativity of all these sources. So we're really hoping you'll be super interested and super creative and come with us and say, if I was flying the spacecraft, here's the experiment I would run and why, and how would you do that? And then we'll have you interface with Nathaniel's team. We'll bring all those together. We'll compile them. We'll sift them, and we'll put together an experimental plan. Then we'll engage you again to actually run those experiments, work with us. All the data will be available for you to analyze if you'd like to do that. You can publish with us. So we really want this to be a partnership with HamSCI, but also globally as well. We also have a collaboration opportunity with Haystack. So I know Phil Erickson, and he generously offered us to have a flyover of Haystack. And so we could have simultaneous observations with Haystack while we fly over. And that's really a great advantage because we can have top and bottom side sounding at the same time. We can have radio propagation experiments. They have an IONUS on there as well. We can have them they'll be our official ground truth, obviously. So it's a great opportunity to see professionals overflying a professional installation and compare our data sets. So thank you, Phil. Here's our timeline. We've completed our mission definition review and preliminary design review. Our CDR, our critical design review, is in September. And then that CLSI, that's applying to NASA for a launch slot. And so we have to get through CDR in order to get to the application. And then hopefully they'll come back and say, yes, we've manifested you in this launch in this date. And then we're hoping for a launch in late 2027. And so this is where the opportunity arises with that background, and that is, I think this team is essential to our success. It's all about transionospheric radio propagation measurements to do what we want to do, and I think you're the best team that can help us do that. We want this to be very open in terms of your role here. We don't want you just to come and transmit. We don't want to limit you to that. We want you to think about what experiments would you actually design. How would we run these experiments? What frequencies? What teams? Polarization? What regions around the globe? What friends do you know around the globe that you want to engage with so that we can make this a true global community opportunity? And then you can execute the experiments themselves. That's great. And then if you're not interested in any of that, but you're really interested in data, I'd be happy to provide you that as well. And so to do this, HamSCI will coordinate all the amateur radio operations in order to provide a central portal for everyone to engage so it's very clear. And so this is our team. The mission lead is Dr. Ruzhitskaya through St. Francis building the CubeSat and running the overall mission. University of Scranton is our HamSCI lead. Chestnut Ridge is providing our X-ray sensor. Altoona is providing our Aurora sensor, and the Ecuadorian Space Agency is the bus. And here you are, our key partners in this, our citizen scientists. So we hope you'll join us. If you're interested, here's the link down here. You can contact Gary or the HamSCI email address there. Is Nathaniel here? Come on up, Nathaniel. I want to get your perspective on this from the HamSCI lead.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, I'm very excited about this. And I think these are the really neat opportunities that the HamSCI collaboration can offer. I mean, how often can you say that amateur radio operators have the opportunity to be listened to by these types of satellites? You know, we have the AMSAT program, but I think this just extends that. And it really gives us a purpose, and just one more purpose to what we're doing as amateurs. So I'm very excited.
Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. Are there any questions? Yes, Nick.
Go, Nick. Here you go. Sorry.
Thank you. In one of the earliest slides, you mentioned 3 to 30 megahertz, I think. Yeah, and yet the receiver itself is capable of more.
That's right.
It was very wide bandwidth.
That's right.
3 to 30 megahertz is what your transmit capability?
No, that's just the transmit capability will be a single frequency somewhere between 5 and 10 megahertz.
Only between 5 and 10
Right,
megahertz.
because
Okay.
it's difficult to have transmit on multiple frequencies.
Okay.
So we're doing the complex conjugate for one frequency only.
Right, but for receiving, you could actually go outside of the 3
Yeah,
to 30
if you could think of
megahertz.
ways to go below 3 megahertz and still have sensitivity, we're all for it.
Okay.
And that 30 is just the dipole, cutoff.
Yeah.
So it's whatever.
Yeah.
If you have ideas beyond that, I'd like to hear
Yeah, I
about
was
it.
going to say 30 megahertz and above, especially above, you're going to be getting a lot of signals coming from the Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Don't limit yourself. If you have
All right.
interesting ideas,
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to hear about it.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Hi, just
Wait, I think, is there one more question? Yeah, one more question from Mark.
Just quick, how big are the dipoles that you're deploying?
5 meters tip to tip.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that.